Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about a part of the spec that a lot of people are generally very afraid of, critical path analysis. They always see this crazy network diagram and they're often put off, but it's not actually that difficult. If you're looking for a breakdown of how to do the network itself, try my next video, but for this I'm just going to talk about what critical path analysis is and what the pros and cons are and why we might use it. Right, to start off with, critical path analysis is a method for completing a task or a project in the shortest possible time. Now, the reason why businesses do this is if you're planning a large project, there may be things that you can do at the same time. Now, to give you an example, we're not far from Wembley Stadium. Now, when they were planning Wembley Stadium, they didn't lay the concrete and then build the stands and then we'll lay the pitch, after we've done that, and we'll put the roof on and do all of those tasks in one kind of line. They thought, how can we possibly put these tasks on at the same time so that we can save money? And that's what critical path analysis is all about. It's how can we complete a very complicated project in the shortest possible time. And yeah, there are some pros and cons for using this strategy. All right, we'll talk through some of the positives. Now, many tasks can be completed at the same time. If you think about it, we'll take it back to that Wembley Stadium example. You can lay the pitch at the same time as you're putting the seats in. So that means that the project can be completed in a shorter amount of time, which means that you can save money on terms of having staff in a different at the same time, so that the project's completed shorter. It also means that you can reallocate resources away from certain tasks that don't need to be completed immediately. Ultimately, it's about keeping the resources and the staff time needed to complete the project to a minimum. Secondly, you can hire in staff at the right time for each activity. So, like with the previous one, you haven't got staff waiting around, sitting there with their arms crossed, waiting for the next task. You only need to hire them at the right possible time. Furthermore, thinking on from that, it also helps with cash flow. If you know that certain payments have to be made for your project at different times, it means that you can consider that when your inflows are coming in and make sure that as a business you're not going into an overdraft or not having to find finance in a different way. So there are a lot of close links between critical path analysis and cash flow. And yeah, if it all goes wrong, which many building projects do, obviously the weather and things like that might change things, the critical path analysis is a really good place to start. You can look at an activity, see if that changes length. Does that mean that that's now the longest length? Is that now the critical path? Yeah, so you can make sure that the project is not affected in an extensive way, or you can look for a way that the project can be, the damage of changes can be limited. Yeah, but having said that, there are some negatives to critical path analysis. For a start, it's based on estimates. So the whole of the project, ultimately, a manager will have had to have sat down and estimate, for example, it's going to take us 6 weeks to put all the seats in Wembley Stadium. Now, it could be end up taking 8 or 9 weeks, which would change the critical path. It means that the thing might not be as effective as we thought. Yeah, so those estimates could be inaccurate, which means the critical path may not be as useful as we would like it to be. Furthermore, it is not the be-all and end-all of the project. It has to be managed properly. So if the project, you might have the greatest plan in the world, but if you don't stick to that plan, then the project may still take longer and that may have implications for the budget. So that could still really be a problem. Also, resources may not be flexible. So if you've got staff that are, for example, I suppose there would be some contractors, but you would have people who are in for laying the pitch, they may not have the necessary tools and experience to be putting up scaffolding or to be installing seats. So although those tasks may be similar, well, not similar, although those tasks may be completed at different times, you might not be able to move those resources over so that those tasks can be, so that resources can be allocated effectively. And finally, it takes a long time possibly to create this diagram. Now, usually critical path analysis is computer generated these days, but smaller businesses may not have the ability to use a critical path because they don't have the software, which probably comes with a hefty subscription fee, and they may not have the time and experience to draw it out by hand. So ultimately, it may not be an option for smaller businesses. Anyway, in my next video, I'm going to be looking at how we can complete a critical path analysis numerically. We'll also be looking at float time. So yeah, I shall see you next time.